I am Ben Doc Askins, the psychedelic science war storyteller, and this is the Anti-Hero's Journey podcast. Intro. Hey, all you anti-heroes out there. Doc Askins here, coming at you with another podcast episode. I call them Q5 podcasts because what comes after Q4 in business? Who knows? Maybe it's Q5, maybe it's Q1. All the numbers are imaginary and this stuff's made up in the first place anyway. I don't call it that for that reason. I call it a Q5 podcast because we're asking my 5 favorite questions to some of my favorite people on the planet. And boy, have I got a treat for you today. I've got my friend, Dr. Jeff Chamberlain, on the podcast. He is, let me pull up his bio here, a second-generation obstetrician-gynecologist focused on providing exceptional, innovative, and personalized women's care. He has delivered thousands of babies. He's a robotic surgeon. He uses technology to deliver physical children, and he's currently in training to become a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy provider. So with his thousands of experiences delivering biological children, he's looking to transition into beginning to deliver spiritual children. Would that be an accurate summary of just a slice of your curriculum vitae, my friend?
Sure. That sounds more amazing than it really is.
That was what I was shooting for. We're going to expand and contract on this particular discussion. All right. But let's jump right into this with the first question, Jeff. What's your story?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Doc, for having me. I feel underprepared and overeducated for this question. But I'll start with from what I first remember of my conscious life. And that was showing up in a really nice home with 2 really nice parents who were busy and who were trying their best. But I was born in Edmonton, Alberta in Canada to an OB-GYN and his wife, my mom, who was at that time working as a physical therapist. So they were actually leaving me at my grandparents' house for, I think, about the first 2 to 3 years of my life. So I ended up spending a lot of my early days and my opening, awakening consciousness days at my grandparents' house, and I fondly remember them as well. Some of the things that are coming to my mind about what I need to talk about for my story and things that sort of guided my worldview was that my parents were strongly influenced by their parents' worldview, which was sort of like a Baptist, evangelical, free, fundamentalist Christian sort of background, which really affected their day-to-day lives. And we went to church like 3 times a week. This was for my whole childhood. And we talked about a lot of the things and the interpretations of that worldview in the Bible a lot, and based our lives off of that. And that's one thing. And another thing is also just the temperaments of my parents is also another thing that really was big in the beginning of my story. I feel like my dad was very passive and calm and quiet and actually not there a lot. He was at work a lot. And then my mom was there quite often, but she was the opposite of that. So she was energetic. She was sort of reactive. And she was trying to figure things out along the way too. That's me looking back, but at the time I didn't know really what was going on. I just knew that she was having more and more children all the time. So there ended up being 5 of us, and I was the oldest of 5 children. And a little bit of background on my parents. My dad's dad was a professor, I guess if you could call it that, at a Bible college in Alberta. There were a lot of these in Western Canada, which were separate from universities intentionally, and were basically schools where you could learn how to be literally interpreting the Bible and how to apply it to your life when you rolled out to either be a minister at a similarly aligned church or just working in your day-to-day life when you decided to do your occupation after that. They trained a lot of missionaries and things like that there. That was in Three Hills, Alberta. So my dad was the oldest of 7 children, and he is quiet pleaser. So what he did was he went to Bible college, then he went to medical school, and then he was going to be a missionary. And so in 1984, when I was 4 years old, another one of my early memories, he took our family to Cote d'Ivoire, and we lived in a village that was basically built around a missionary hospital, so that people would just bring their sick and bring their laboring patients and people who needed surgery to this village, and they would get care. And it was, so he started off by taking over for an OB-GYN for 6 months to see if this was something he would be into for the rest of his life or his career. And what I remember most about it was the smell of burning garbage and deep dirt wells that were everywhere that these guys were always digging. And I was basically a feral child just running around with a lot of these townies or people that were there while they're like children who were there with their families. So I thought it was one of the coolest ways to sort of be waking up, but like to your consciousness and being like, this is awesome. And there's actually some pictures of my dad and me in the operating room together. And I don't really remember this. I just remember him telling me about it and seeing the pictures, and I have one in my office. But I'm like, I have a cap and gown on and a little mask, and I'm kind of watching my dad do surgery. So
at 4 years old.
Yeah, 4 years old.
Oh my
They don't allow that these days in Colorado. but anyways, I'm getting
more's the pity.
I'm trying not to get really too long into this. Just setting the setup is that basically my parents were hard workers. They were trying to follow along a worldview that they were taught, and I was also sort of becoming sort of a pleaser. But in the midst of, as I started to realize things, I realized that I was having trouble following the rules that were being laid out, but I still was intelligent enough to be questioning them as well. So, but I didn't exactly know how to reconcile all of it. There was this one worldview that I was learning at home, and then there was this other worldview that I was learning in public schools about like science and all those things that was fascinating to me, and history and all of these things. And I just, so kind of a point where this sort of starts becoming my own worldview is I went for my first year of Bible college in Regina, Saskatchewan, not Vagina, Saskatchewan, Regina, Saskatchewan. When I was 18 years old in 1998, and I went with one of my best friends who had also been raised in that church, and him and I really got into the idea that we didn't believe any of this shit. Except we kind of did. So we believed it. We wanted to learn as much about it as we could. And we wanted to go way beyond what was the starting point that had been given to us at church and at Bible school, but we thought there was so much more. One of the things that was cool about the Bible college was that there was a couple of guys that were there that really shouldn't have been there, that were professors. One of them had a PhD from Cambridge, and one of them, and he was like he had studied the historical Jesus, and there was some neat stuff that was like helped sort of embolden my questioning attitude, but also think that maybe there still were some things I could hang on to moving forward and as I was building my own worldview. So Scott, my best friend, he went on to be he got a PhD in theology at the University of Toronto, and he is like he is the representative for the whole Anglican Church of Canada for what's it called when what's that movement to like make all churches and beliefs kind of come together and reconcile?
Is it the World Council of Churches?
Yeah, but it starts with an E, but it's like a
ecumenicalism.
Ecumenical. He's like the ecumenical chair for the Anglican Church of Canada. So he does all sorts of neat things with Aboriginal people in Canada and like all across the board. So it's really cool. So it's neat to see where he's gone. And then for me, I basically I went and got a philosophy degree at another Christian college in Kentucky, which wasn't very philosophical. It was just mainly theological. In the same sort of worldview. And then by the time I got to medical school, I was like, well, this stuff all doesn't really make sense, and I'm not sure what I believe anymore. And then at that point, there was some things that came up with my parents that I was just like, they sort of are not doing what I would like to do with their beliefs. They're kind of just continuing to follow them without questioning anything. And so that isn't necessarily a blow to them. It's just so that's the belief system stuff. But then when it comes to like just the how to live your life stuff, I went through the period of time now, especially that I've had children, of criticizing my parents for everything they ever did to me, disregarding all the cool stuff they did for me, and the loving stuff they did for me. But I'm trying to coming around to being like, you know what, they were doing what they could. They were learning along the way, and I need to love them, and I need to learn to love the little case and body and mind that I'm in as well a little bit more. And maybe so the psychedelic stuff, that was sort of like, that came up for me as being sort of something that wasn't organic, like that I just kind of decided I was going to do on my own. It was more, I have done lots of recreational drugs throughout my life, and that wasn't necessarily to find something like a higher power or a unifying theory. It was more for just fun and because I was rebellious and all those kinds of things. But then when I was offered an opportunity to do it for a wholesome, meaningful reason, in more of a grander, sort of context of trying to be a better person. I'm not sure if your listeners know about that.
Let's keep it our little secret.
Yeah. So we can edit that part too. But basically, when I was introduced to psychedelics, it was in a safe, with the intention of this understanding sort of some deeper truths potentially. It was in a safe environment with people I trusted, and with a lot more directed intention. And so when I did have that experience, I was like, holy crap, how do I reconcile that with everything that I believe? Because my experience that I had was about 2.5 hours long of, the eye mask, the weighted blanket, let's just call it the holotropic breathing, and other things, that with music and like ambient music, and sort of like some prompts to talk and to have it recorded, what I was saying, and then reviewing that later on over the next few months. And it was just a neat experience of not necessarily a bunch of visuals, but a lot of just self-love and not knowing what I was really experiencing or looking at outside of me, but feeling like that it was very familiar, and that it was like that everything was fine, everything's okay, that regardless of a beginning, middle, or end, everything is fine. And then I just went through a lot of gratitude statements that were, and not necessarily apologizing for things that I'd done, but I did a little bit of that about like people that I feel like I've hurt, or that people who I feel like have hurt me. I just sort of was like, you know what, I'm not going to try to dwell on that as much anymore. So coming out of that, there's been a couple other ones, but that initial one was where I was like, well, how do I put all this together with everything I've learned? And I kind of got into some, reading of the mystics and reading of Gnostics and reading of, Buddhist stuff, and realizing that all of that stuff to me is neat. But it really comes down to those things are kind of like ancestral or cultural pointers into like maybe a certain direction where these mystical altered states kind of accelerate the process of experiencing these kinds of feelings. But when it comes down to like what it all means, maybe it just means that we need to be nice to each other and love ourselves and love, the people that we're put around every day. So I don't know, I kind of went all over the place, and I didn't talk about all the different players, and I don't want to really throw too many people under the bus because I don't feel like necessarily it's their fault. But I guess that's my story. That's the beginning of my story. I don't know how good of a story that is compared to your other guests yet, but
I think there are tons of elements there that are going to resonate with a lot of people, because your story, as you're telling it, is one of your beliefs being constructed for you in a complex family of origin setting that was deeply religious. And then this period of deconstruction, right, that you described as pretty disruptive. And there's a lot of emotion around deconstructing some of your most fundamental beliefs about who you are and how the world works. And now you're in this phase of ongoing reconstruction where you're putting the pieces together and you're figuring out what was going on back then and what the heck's going on now and where am I headed, and being able to integrate all of those parts and pieces in meaningful ways is what it sounds like you're oriented toward, and you're figuring some things out. One of my son and I's favorite bands is Wage War, and they have this lyric, hate is a cancer, we are the problem, love is the answer. And that was what I was thinking of when you were kind of trying to land the plane there on like, what is the point? Like, what are we doing here? And I think you're on the right track as far as that goes. So I ask everybody about what's your story, asking about memory and about how you construct and tell all of those sorts of things. And then the second question's around what are your intentions, which is more about imagination and where you're headed next on this chapter of reconstruction for you. What are your intentions, Jeff?
Well, my first one that I was reminded of a lot over this past week, because I spent it with my children before they went back to school, was don't fuck it up. Like I think you and I have texted back and forth as I've gone through your book, and we were talking about the Taylor Swift analogy and the anti-hero and I'm the problem. And I just feel like
it's me.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm the problem. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, exactly. So that I really liked that. So it was just, I'm not sure if it's coincidence or not or whatever. I guess not. But so that's sort of like my but I want to be a lot more compassionate towards myself and others with that intention. What I mean by that is that now that I kind of have this idea that every day of my life is pretty simple. All I have to do is just, serve some people and serve. And then that makes everything that, because I like simplicity. I'm not a very complicated, like when things get complicated, I get anxious and stressed and don't know what I'm doing and I can't sleep and stuff like that.
Yeah. But keep it simple, surgeon.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm like, knife, robot.
There is a baby. I need to cut it free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's an amazing thing I get to do. But anyway, so there's some other things that I've been thinking about too. Like, I don't need to have a very overarching, compelling mission, but just something simple like loving people, and myself. And having, like, so an intention would be don't fuck it up. My compelling mission of maybe loving people, because those are simple things for me to remember. Having a posture of gratitude for everything I do have, and then being more focused on sort of like the process than the end point, maybe. And just the journey, and not worrying about where it's all going.
Yeah, the journey and the journeyers maybe are the point rather than the destination to some degree. And you've already kind of anticipated the next question with, your story and your intentions moving forward. What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful for sure all the amazing things that have been in my life. Like, I've had a very privileged life compared to lots of people, with a really nice family upbringing, and I've been blessed with an amazing wife and amazing children. But I'm also grateful for some of the things that I find as stumbling blocks and challenges. And the biggest one is, I think, my ego. That the man in the mirror is a pretty big challenge and adversity for me. So I'm grateful for whatever that is, but I'm grateful for each day, coming up as an opportunity for growth too. So, but all those amazing, nice things, I mean, those are like, I'm thankful for the pointers that I was given and how we start, and the stories that were passed on to me. And I'm thankful for the people who've loved me and hurt me, and the people who've loved me and hurt me.
This is the way.
Yeah. I'm not trying to point anybody out, Mom. I love you, Mom.
With all of your gratefulness and ungratefulness being integrated here. What what are you creating next?
Um, this one I thought was a fun one because I feel like I create a lot of problems, contradictions, and confusion, especially for my wife and children. Um, despite this enlightened posture that I have, but it has to do with that cool ego guy that I have on my shoulder or in my face or sticking out of my eyeballs and mouth every second of the day. Asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I should
So
ask, what are you uncreating and creating?
yeah, exactly. No, but no, that was my joke. But definitely, I'm trying to create a posture of service and love towards others, and appreciation for like the here, the now, the ordinary, and appreciation for my job, I am an OB-GYN that delivers mostly healthy people. Lots of them are like Olympians' children. Like literally, there's like 100 people that have become Olympians in this town. Like it's crazy. They don't all live here, but they come here and do that. But I've delivered lots of their kids. So like there's all these cool, crazy, motivated people that I get to help. I liked helping the sick people in Kentucky too, that I helped. That was a different population that I helped with my dad's practice. A lot of them were sort of like Medicaid patients, but because I have a tendency to become discontent a lot and looking and comparing myself and, sucking all the joy out of my life with comparing myself to others when there's so much that regardless of all the things that have been given to me and that I've earned and my education is allowed, that are so awesome every day, just the simple things. So it's pretty cool. So I'm trying to not take that for granted and try to use a graceful tone and use like thankful language and just be kind to like the medical assistant who's rooming for me all day and the nurse who's helping me with a patient who's in labor, and just those things, because that's the way I'm going to be. Not even because it's the way I'm going to be remembered, but because I don't want to be a fucking asshole, that's my arena. This is my realm. These are the people I influence. Like, it's not just the patients and their children, it's all these other little things. So I'm just trying to be a little bit better at living. I guess, so what I'm trying to create, and like this stuff about the more compelling things, like the education, the new education I'm getting, and maybe the rolling out of some psychedelic-assisted therapies for women who are suffering from, all of the crazy shit like anxiety and depression and PTSD that can come along with the world that we live in and the pressures it puts on them, and the things that I organically help them with too in my work, like infertility and miscarriages and body dysmorphia and chronic pelvic pain, endometriosis, all those things. Like, I feel like there hasn't been too much, and I'm not somebody who's been doing a lot of research. I've been more of a practitioner, but I have access to people who are doing research or might do it. And I have access to people who might be rolling out clinics nearby me or that I could collaborate with. That is pretty fucking cool. So I just feel like, and when we were at that psychedelic science conference, I spoke with a lot of women that were sort of in the Western Colorado region who are already kind of starting to roll out some stuff that could be really neat. So that would be not a huge leap from what I'm doing to what I'm kind of interested in, and kind of bringing a lot of this stuff together. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I was only very mildly speaking with my tongue in my cheek when I was doing your intro, saying that you're at this incredible nexus point between, being a biological OB-GYN and then being a spiritual OB-GYN, and that the distinction between those two things starts to blur and starts to fade whenever we start to see people as whole people rather than merely material entities, or bodies that have souls or souls that have bodies, or all these ways that we kind of parse things out to try to understand them better and then fail to stitch them back together and understand them as wholes again. And I think it's incredible the opportunity that you're on the cusp of with your background as a surgeon, but then with the intention and orientation that you have towards, holistic health for women and children and all the rest of us out here. So I'm excited to see what you create and what the future holds for you, given your story and your intentions and your gratefulness and what you're creating. My last question for you, Jeff, is who are you really?
Yeah, this was the one I was. Can we go back to the what I'm creating question?
Speak into the microphone.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. So what am I really? Well, I like that Pearl Jam song, Nothing Man. I like that one. Just thinking about that song. That was a nice high school treat.
It's a classic.
I didn't know that it was, yeah.
Throwback to the 90s and the early double aughts. That feels like all that I'm listening to at this point. Like I'm just kind of reliving the good old days of, the Warped Tour when it first got started or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what am I really? Well, I think of myself as whatever it means, a child of God, created in the image of God, a nothing man. I think of myself as deep down, there's some love and there's some hate and there's some discontent. It's kind of all wrestling together. And I think of myself as a doubting Thomas, and it's cool that I named my son Thomas. I named him partly after Thomas Aquinas, but also after doubting Thomas. I'm a faker.
It's funny because the word Thomas means twin.
I know.
The original, and you got
cool.
Thomas Aquinas and Saint Thomas that you named your one son after, the twins.
Yeah. No, I thought I always wanted to. I thought if I had a son, that'd be a cool name for him, because Thomas was always the person in the Bible that I felt the most aligned with. I was like, show me some fucking proof here. Like, what's going on here?
I want to touch the wound. Let me touch the wound.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me just stick my hand in there and then I'm yours.
This guy
I'm all
doesn't
yours.
look anything like him. We're all sitting here. What's going on here? Anyways, but I'm a doer too. Yes, I went through medical school, and yes, I thought I was a philosopher. But I'm I like doing things. I like doing things with my hands, and like when something bad is happening, I want to do something, and I don't really want to think about it. So what am I really? I don't know, but my hope is that I can live a life of compassion and kindness by serving others, and that whatever I am will be known through my actions and not less through my words. I think I told you that I snuck onto Ernest Hemingway's property in Ketchum last week. I wasn't supposed to be doing that, but it's an artist's residence now. So I think that they're okay with people walking around, but I've been reading his books for some random reason. I don't even know why, and they're kind of depressing. A lot of his books are kind of depressing, but he is a super simple, easy writer to read. But in one of his books, A Farewell to Arms, he's escaped from the front lines, and he's trying to get to Switzerland in World War I from Italy. And he's hanging out playing pool in a bar with this 94-year-old guy named Count Greffy. And he's like one of the father figures of the main character in this scene. And in the 94-year-old guy goes, well, I'm a lot less devout than I thought I would be at this point in my life. And then he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, I just hope people pray for me because I didn't really get around to being devout, throughout my life. And then he says, that even though I haven't really become wise or devout, I've become careful, and I've thought that, loving people is the most important thing. And I was just like, well, that's pretty cool. Even though the book ends really horribly otherwise. That's just kind of a little nugget tucked in there. So that doesn't really answer who I am. It's talking about what I've been reading and what I hope I can do. But
it makes me think
of
that old
I'm a zero.
There's that old Blue Clocks Green song thrown back to the the 90s and the double aughts there with the Hemingway song. You can do it anyway, just like Hemingway. You can be a hero. All you have to know is what to say.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know who I am, but I'm trying to be somebody better. but not really worried about it if I don't.
Well, I'm excited to be on the journey with you and to see where these chapters of Reconstruction are going to take you going forward, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and thanks a lot for writing that book. I mean, even if you didn't actually write that book, I'm glad that it ended up in my hands, and I started like reading the words and thinking about the things. I liked my favorite word in the whole book is probably janosexual. So I'm a mo-sexual. And I also realized that I hadn't read Moby Dick, so I got to read that.
It's a good spiritual allegory if you've got eyes to see and ears to hear. You know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So from here on out, you can call me Jeff or Chambo or Bushman or mo-sexual.
Yeah. You know, it's
so what are you really? I'm a mo-sexual.
A whole bunch of pseudonyms. Let's just stack up all the pseudonyms and all the certificates,
the thousands of names. Yeah,
and all we'll put it down there in my trophy room. And all the people think about all the stuff. Yeah. And let's light it on fire and walk away.
Yeah, dumpster fire. I do. Speaking of those, I did light some in my teen years, but when I smell this certain smell of burning garbage, and I did smell it quite often in Eastern Kentucky when I was doing locums there, it brought me like immediately back to West Africa when I was 4 years old. Just something about something burning, just that certain whatever it is. It's like it brings you right back.
Yeah, it's funny how universal garbage fire smell can be, because I've been on most of the continents at this point, and over again, it's just an easy connection to make inside my, inside my brain.
The lowest common denominator, burning
yes.
garbage.
This is familiar. This smells like home. Yes.
I feel okay. I'm not fully.
This smells like earth. Yes, I'm in the right place. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I love you, man.
Love you too, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
Doc out.